I'm Dr. Tracy Stecker, and welcome to the Choosing Help podcast. Choosing Help presents conversations about courage, connection, and the transformative power of asking for support. Through candid discussions, expert insights, and real-world stories, this podcast breaks down stigma and opens doors to understanding. Join our community committed to compassion and courage. Because when we choose help, we choose life. I'm Dr. Tracy Stecker, and I'm joined today by Dr. Jennifer Gómez. Dr. Gómez is a psychologist at Boston University, and her work has been highly recognized and awarded and focuses on cultural betrayal trauma theory. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'd like to just open it up. I kind of zoned right in, but I know it needs a little bit of setup. Do you mind telling us a little bit about your theory?
Sure. And so excited to be here and to be in conversation with you, Tracy. So cultural betrayal trauma theory, I first developed back in 2012, or first proposed in 2012. And a reminder of the context was that we were in a post-racial society. That was the rhetoric at the time. Um, and the general idea is that because we weren't in a post-racial society, and we
Mhm.
have never been, that because of this context of inequality, in this case, racism, um, for Black people, but this could work across different marginalized groups, but we'll focus on Black people, that there's kind of a bond that Black folks can have with each other to guard against that racism business.
Mhm.
And we see that as positive. But then when violence happens within the Black community, then it has this cultural betrayal. So it violates that solidarity.
Yeah.
And then what you're looking at are mental health outcomes, the stuff that we typically think about, like depression, PTSD, suicide, a whole host of things, as well as cultural outcomes, which you don't often think about, and certainly hadn't before cultural betrayal trauma theory, to my knowledge, of like internalized prejudice. And so kind of key cases that you can think about is R. Kelly. R. Kelly's been sexually abusing Black teen girls, knowingly so, like since the mid 90s. I don't know for folks who weren't Black and who weren't in like the African American community if you all knew, but certainly within the kind of dominant African American culture, we all knew. This was
Mhm.
never a secret, this was never contested. Um, and that's then cultural betrayal, what he did, cultural betrayal, sexual trauma for all these years. As well as other concept I call intercultural pressure, which is the keep problems in house. And so even though we all know that he's doing this, we all don't say it because police have a racism problem, social workers have a racism problem, clinicians have a racism problem, and we don't want to draw attention to ourselves. And so the burden for protecting all of us from racism then falls on the people who were victimized,
Mhm.
and not on changing larger society. Um, and a more recent case would be Sean Combs, also known as P. Diddy. And then, of course, there are lots of cases and lots of situations with people who aren't famous, right? Like inside of our own families, our own communities, our own faith organizations, from our mentors, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. So it's like betrayal on top of betrayal with an extra layer of not even sure you can do anything about it because the systems um, don't feel safe.
Yeah, and the systems aren't safe, right? Like they
Mhm.
don't feel safe because they're not safe.
Right.
And so what that's bad news. But it also means that we could then change the systems. And so then part of the intervention for how do we help folks heal from trauma then has to be how do we change how clinicians are trained? How do we change
Mhm.
how police are trained? How do we have alternatives from justice, from police, et cetera, et cetera? Like you have these cultural betrayal trauma theory implicates these larger systems of
Mhm.
inequality. And so then
Mhm.
interventions also have to include those larger systems.
Okay, so I'm gonna back up just to make sure I understood it right. There's Cultural betrayal trauma theory is the idea that there has been a trauma,
Mhm.
an actual trauma, a violence of some sort upon somebody within their own tribe. Is
Yeah,
that
yeah, within their own marginalized group. And
okay?
so, like, just because you and I are similar, if we're both
Mhm.
dominant, then there isn't that cultural betrayal, even
Mm.
though we're part of the same group. It's
Right.
the same marginalized group. Again, because it's like that inequality that's causing
Yeah.
the ripple down effects for cultural betrayal.
Okay. Which then makes it important that it's within a system where there's not a place where you can ask for help.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes.
Okay. And then what might symptoms be? You named some of them, but I really want to highlight how it might impact somebody who's had this happen to them.
Yeah, so you can be thinking about, well, a few things. So one is that because it can be harder to seek help and there might not be places that you can go to, then, and you
Hmm.
know this, Tracy, from your work, then if you're not engaging in help, then you're less likely to get services, right?
Right.
You do try to engage, those services are inappropriate or are oppressive, et cetera. You're also not getting the healing. So there's whatever you can be thinking about regarding kind of delayed help seeking for folks who do need help applies here, right?
Hmm.
Um, in terms of there's mental health stuff, stuff like dissociation, like
Yeah.
I'm having this conversation with you, but instead of being able to stay present with you, I'm floating outside of my body, or you seem to be like kind of unreal to me or distant, and I can't stay present.
So you're gonna say your lines. You're
Mhm.
gonna be as present as you can be, but you're not really here because you're shattered inside. Is
Yeah,
that?
yes. And if we're thinking from a cultural betrayal perspective, then you can be thinking about how if I have to go and be around this person who committed violence against me, this group who knows about it, but we're all just not going to talk about it, like why that disconnection and why
Hmm.
that internal kind of shattering, like you said, or fragmentation makes
Hmm.
sense, right? Like I
Hmm.
can't be my full self here with the group. And
Right.
the added cultural betrayal piece is that I need this group. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because I get, even though violence happened within this group, I also get understanding around what is it like to be a Black person in the US? What is it like to be a Black woman? What is it like to be able to shorthand culture, shorthand understandings of inequality? You know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
the similar stuff that you would think about for violence, but added stuff on top of it because of this inequality business that we have.
Yeah.
I think another important piece are these cultural components. So the internalized prejudice piece could be like, if what happened to me, if this violence is part of what it means like to be Black, like I've heard that Black people are violent, that that's why they're all in prison. Like maybe that's true. And maybe I
Hmm.
don't want to be Black anymore. And I just don't, I want to be human. I don't want to be, part of this group.
So a little more, a different level of dissociation, not just leaving your body, but leaving your person.
Yeah, yeah, and your identity, right? And
Hmm.
adopting the bigoted narratives from society.
Hmm.
And with that, sometimes can come acceptance. Like
Hmm.
I'm accepting this how I feel now. Other
Hmm.
times, what I've seen clinically in my past is this like kickback shame, of like I'm now having a response, I, the client, now having a response to seeing Black men after being abused. I feel like my body is not doing me a solid because I know not all Black men are violent, but I'm having this kind of PTSD sort of reaction. But now
Right.
it's against Black men. And now I
Hmm.
feel like I'm being racist for that. You know what I mean? So I want to be disconnected. You know what I mean? So it's just like
Hmm.
all of this stuff folded in on top of each other.
Yeah, lots of layers here. And
Mhm.
it is like, I was thinking in my head as you were talking, it is like betrayal squared, but it is not like betrayal squared. It is like betrayal times 10 because of all those layers that we're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when I asked about symptoms, thank you for saying the dissociation, you kind of distance from your own body and what's going on for you, but even from your own identity. But then any sort of symptoms across the board, substance use or depression, or
Yeah.
you said thoughts of suicide. I
Yeah.
have a hair.
Hair be gone.
It was very distracting for me in that moment. But all of those symptoms really across the board that you might see in somebody who has had this experience
hmm
of cultural betrayal.
Yes, and then the reasons behind it being different, or being augmented, like we're saying, which is
Yeah,
that if you just go straight, like evidence-based treatment that you would normally do, like you're missing a bunch of stuff potentially. Or if the client isn't disclosing to you and you're outgrouped, so if it's a Black female client and you're a white clinician, they're not disclosing, like that could be because of the classic many, many reasons people don't disclose trauma. It could be
right.
because they don't want to make their group look bad to you. You
Hmm.
know, um, if
Hmm.
you're in groups, if you've got a Black woman client or a Black woman clinician, it might be like, I don't want the clinician to think that I'm bad mouthing Black people. I don't know what they're going to say. I don't want to. And so it
Right.
adds all these other considerations that are important to have then in therapeutic spaces, therapy, healing spaces of hypotheses that you have of what could be happening for a given person. Right.
This is another really important point. There are so many important points, but when in my work in terms of resistance to treatment seeking, really focusing on helping somebody change their mindset about treatment so that they're more likely to come to treatment. In terms of trauma, one of the most likely things that we hear from people who've been traumatized is that they don't want to talk about it. And
Mhm.
so you've said that extra dimension here, that's going to be there. They don't want to talk about it, but they also don't want to make their own group look bad. That extra layer, it's not even just they don't want to talk about it, but they're almost protective of it, protective of their own group.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And are aware potentially of the protection that's mandated, the protection that's required. Um,
Yeah, to
so
survive.
yes, and there's punishment for it. So again, at larger scale with Black women who are Kelly sexually abused, Russell Simmons sexually abused, those women have gotten death threats. You know what I mean? And vitriol from Black people, like
Hmm.
saying like, "What are you doing here?" And there's this inversion not to tell people who are perpetrating, like, what are you doing? Like, we need each other. Come on. Like, so that's not happening in
Right.
the same way, but it's this internal, like, potentially like I have the need to protect our group and also potentially an awareness of like, if I don't, then there are real consequences to
I'm
this.
in danger. Yeah. I
Yeah.
already don't feel safe, but I might be in danger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. This is why your work has been so recognized. This is really important to talk about. Um, I laughed a second ago, not because anything you're saying is funny, but you're such a dancer. You even the way you tilt your head, there's I still see that ballerina.
She's everywhere. She's gonna come out.
Um, so before we talk about, because this is a very serious situation that we're talking about, and it impacts many, many, many people. So it's important that we're talking about it, and it's important that people know that there is a theory behind it, an understanding of it. There are people who understand and places to get help. Um, well, let's talk about that first. Where can somebody who's in the situation knows it. They know it.
Mhm.
It is completely clear to them the situation that they're in. So it's not the idea of can you recognize when you're in it? Because I imagine they are aware that they're in the situation. They're aware of the trauma and they are aware of the need for silence and maybe even aware that nobody will understand. There might not be a safe space for them to go. You're here to say there is a safe space. There is understanding. There are groups of us that we're here for places you can go. Do you want to talk a little bit about where somebody can go for help?
Oh, that's a really good. So I think. you might not like this.
Okay.
I do think that I will say there are places that can be safe. I'll also say there are many places that are dangerous.
Mhm.
And so being able to kind of like uh, slowly but surely figure out if a place is safe or not, dangerous or not, with the understanding that like people are fallible, like no place is perfectly safe. No place with another human being at least is perfectly safe because
Mhm.
we're all fallible, we're all flawed. Um, I think what I talk about in my book, The Cultural Betrayal of Black Women and Girls, there's a chapter on therapy, which I think is important as a clinical psychologist. There's a chapter on institutional courage from Concept Dr. Jennifer Fried of this, how do we make this like larger systems level, change? But there's also a chapter on radical healing in the Black community. And this is the kind of what can I do and where can I go
Yeah.
that's not formal, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so there are things in that chapter I pull from Brianna French and colleagues' psychological framework for radical healing in communities of color. And so there are, oh yeah, psychological framework for radical healing in communities of
Yeah.
color. I see you writing, Tracy.
Yes, I am.
And so they've had some articles out publicly, in addition to peer-reviewed articles. It's Brianna French, Dr. Helen Neville, Dr. Mosley, and others. Um, so it's a framework that, again, puts the healing that's needed within context. So how can we lead into collectivism? How can we lead into our own history and our ancestors? How can we lead into kind of like thoughts of liberation, and et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
So I pull from that. I pull from, and I don't know if we can see it from here. I'm looking at my books in the back. Dr. Tama Bryant's Thriving in the Wake of Trauma, a Multicultural Guide. That's a book from now 20 years old, but it's phenomenal and it's for real people and talks about all the different ways that you can strategize or kind of have avenues for healing. So things like
Mhm.
engaging in the arts, painting, dancing, journaling, connect with other people, activism, like
Mhm.
all these different things that you can do. In the book, I talk about the process of free writing, which is
Mhm.
just like sitting down and writing things out. So a place where I've started that's included in the chapter is pulling from Nina Simone, the Black classical musician Nina Simone, and saying, "What is free to me?" So if I were free, what would that mean to me? And doing a free write for it and finding space. There's in a free write, I talk about Nakia, I believe I named her Nakia, pseudonym of a Black woman who was sexually abused by her father. So you have these cultural betrayal and layers of like institutional betrayal, right? And like
Mhm.
all this stuff. And her free write was about if her father took responsibility and like really said he was sorry, like what would that be? And she kind of, in a dissociative way, sort of
Yeah.
channeled her father's voice, since her father's not a safe person to actually try to engage in that conversation with,
Yeah.
and was able to get so much healing from this channeled version of her father saying, I don't know why I did it. It could have been this reason, this reason, this reason, this reason, or that reason, but I shouldn't have done it. And I was totally wrong. And it was not your fault. And I should have protected you from me, et cetera, et cetera. So she was able to get this relational healing without the danger of being in a relationship with her father, who's by all accounts not capable of taking responsibility in that fashion.
Right. But
Um,
she took his voice.
mhm,
She took his voice and his identity in her own self
mhm.
and gave herself the I'm sorry
Yeah.
that she needed to hear in that time without him being involved at all.
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so I have things in that chapter, and there's things like with your body, like how can we get having our body be a place that's safe, right? That we don't
Yeah.
need to dissociate from. Um, so there are things with other people. I talk, excuse me, about the family and like how can healing be happening within the family?
Mhm.
and not which is how I was raised, like unity no matter what. If we want unity, then this needs to be a place that's halfway decent, for
Mhm.
all of us in here, that does not
Mhm.
have discrimination, does not have violence. And if we can change those things in the family, fantastic. If we can't, then how can we entertain um, safe distancing in whatever form that might look for you, which is a
Yeah.
quite controversial statement for African American folks. Not every single African American folk, but in general, is a kind of dominant culture, more collectivist. And I've used that example with the family and gotten so much feedback from Black people who have Black women in particular, who have done that distancing. Uh,
Mhm.
and some people completely, like, do not talk to their family at all. Some people, I still talk to my father, but my children are not around him, whatsoever. I go for
Mhm.
holidays on my own or whatever version it is. Um, and how the feedback I've gotten is like gratitude for speaking about this, about the possibility that leaving in whatever form, whatever that might take for you, is necessary.
Mhm.
And you're still Black if you leave. And being
Mhm.
Black doesn't mean that you have to accept abuse.
Absolutely.
It's also a racist frame of like, well, we're a Black family, so that must mean that there's going to be abuse here. But why? Um, there could be something else. So I think in that section too, I talk about like, and pulling from, I think this one you can see Dr. Tama Bryant's Homecoming book of creating creating a home within yourself as an individual, creating a home with made family, with loved ones. Some of us are born into great families, and some of us are not. Um,
Right.
and for those of us who are not, doesn't mean that that you're just like done. You can still have a made family or loved ones or whatever. Um,
Mhm.
close relational structure that you create, it still is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was I loved your answer. You said I wasn't going to like it, but I did. I did like it, and so much I'm going to repeat it or summarize it if I can.
Yeah.
So my question was, where can somebody go for help if they're in that situation? And you said it's possible it's not professional help that they seek. And that's true. The majority of people who are struggling with some sort of mental health or substance use problem, but particularly trauma, do not seek help.
Mhm.
The whole purpose of this podcast is to help those who are not seeking help, who might need it.
Mhm.
So professional help is an option.
Mhm.
If you see it as an option, there are ways to rethink that. But in this case, what Dr. Gomez is laying out are some other options that are very viable. And for this particular circumstance, I heard things like reading. Well, I heard that a lot, and there's books all behind her for those that can see.
Yeah.
Um, Engaging in the arts, music, dancing, um, any sort of artistic endeavor, and
Mhm.
then particularly writing, taking on the voice of a perpetrator and allowing that person to say the things that you desperately need to hear because they might not be able to say them. They might not ever say them, or might not be able to say them. They might even not be with us anymore. So if you're not going to get that apology or that explanation for some reason, great. Okay. Know that you're not going to get it. And at the same time, tell it to yourself.
Mhm.
Let Tell it to yourself and see what happens. See if there's power there. Maybe it will be a healing moment. Maybe it won't, but at least take the opportunity to say the words that you need to desperately hear and write them down. There is something about writing them down, or paint them if you happen to be a painter, or put together a choreography
Yeah.
and dance it out. But however you need to hear that um, what was done to you was not okay. And I am sorry. However you need to say that to yourself is an opportunity for healing. So take those opportunities. If you are still struggling, always understand that there are trauma experts
Mhm.
in your local area, and you can maybe seek seek that out too. And like Dr. said, try it out. You don't know if it will be a good experience for you. You might have to take a session or two before you describe why you're there.
Mhm.
Let them know you're trying them out. Psychologists know, we know you're trying us out.
Mhm.
It's okay. Just say, I had something traumatic happen to me. I don't know if I'm ready to talk about it. I'm testing you to see if you're a safe person.
Yeah.
It's okay. We've heard it before. It is
Yeah.
okay to say that. It's okay to go slowly. You do not have to come to a first session of trauma treatment
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
say, I'm going to tell you what happened and you're going to fix me in 6 sessions. That's not typically how it goes. You can ease into it. You can take your time. You can take your pacing. It is important to talk about it. And I think what Dr. Gomez is saying here, everything that she's saying is, please recognize this. Please talk about it. Please find your safe space. If your safe space is only within yourself momentarily, take it. Take
Mhm.
that safe space within yourself.
Mhm.
Did I summarize that okay?
That was excellent. I think I would add too that like I'm not anti-therapy. I
Hmm.
am anti-bad therapy.
Correct.
And I am
Amen.
aware of how we're trained. I'm aware of what's in our training and what's not. So I'm
Hmm.
quite critical
Hmm.
of it, but I'm not anti-therapy. And so I think
Hmm.
or should I call you Dr. Stecker? I think like what you're
You
what
can call me Tracy. It's
you can call me Jennifer too. I think, but I appreciate the respect. I think that what Tracy, what you're saying around like the questions to ask, like the boundaries to put up in therapy, and yes, many clinicians have heard it before.
Mhm.
If a therapist responds poorly when you,
Yeah.
I don't want to rush or I don't want to, when they respond poorly,
Yeah.
cool. Deuces. I'll try somebody else, or I'll go on my own for a couple months, and I'm going to come back to somebody different. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
you can, I agree completely about like the trust takes time. Knowing if it's going to work or not takes time, and having a therapist who respects your boundaries and who wants to really reinforce your boundaries. Like,
Particularly for trauma victims.
yeah,
Yeah. Hmm.
yes. And so if you say no or slow down and the therapist says, cool, got it, I'm with you, trust that part of yourself that is saying that this is too fast, you don't want to, that's awesome.
Yes.
If you have someone else who's not doing that and who's doing something else, then
Hmm.
that isn't therapists at large. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? That's this therapist within this training. And so try something different, go someplace else, and do believe that healing is possible. And it can happen sometimes in therapy, sometimes outside, sometimes both, sometimes
Right.
with ourselves, sometimes with other people,
Yeah.
etc. But it absolutely is possible.
Yeah. And 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 one of the things I think is true in terms of healing from trauma is to talk about it. So even if, what we were just talking about, writing that letter to yourself, if that's the one of the options you take to find healing, that piece of hair.
Is it back? Did you get it? She's okay, everyone. She got the hair.
It's because I kept going on this side, but that darn little thing was on that side.
You had to keep trying. You couldn't give up. You knew it was possible to get the hair out of the way, and you just kept trying a different strategy until you found it.
Silly,
There's
silly little hair. The same is true with healing
same
from
is true.
trauma. Um, but talking about it is key. One aspect of a traumatic event is that everybody goes in because it is so horrific that's by definition that we tend to avoid the triggers or thinking about it in any way, shape, or form. So that's just a natural instinct to survive. We tuck in and we avoid anything related to that. Healing from it means that you let that out. Let it out however you need to let it out. It might be like Jennifer saying in treatment, but there are all sorts of ways that you can let it out, and it's probably going to be a combination. We never know which exact moment. Ooh, not healed, healed. It doesn't really work like that. It is sort of a process. And I think all I'm saying with that is don't be afraid of the process. Um, there are safe people, there are safe places, and even if it's in your own self momentarily, take it. Please take it.
Hmm. Hmm. I I wrote something down while you were talking, and I cannot read my own handwriting. Can learn how, you said that a lot of times people avoid and kind of like, but also like part of the healing is that you can learn how to engage with what happened in a way that is less overwhelming.
Yes.
So a lot of times
Yeah.
people have the dialectic of like I'm kind of sheltering and avoiding, or I'm like deep in processing and like suffering,
Hmm.
and I can't tolerate it. So
Hmm.
I'm using substances or drinking or drugs in a way that isn't healthy, or I'm self-harming in a way that isn't healthy for me, or I'm over-exercising. It's like I can't tolerate this intensity. And
Right.
so part of the healing process is getting more skilled at like how do I engage with what happened in a way that isn't just torturous. So I'm not going for
Right.
like torture and avoidance, and that can take time. And I think the what I found super important is like not perpetrating against yourself, like in an effort to not be avoidant, not going like headlong and just like suffering and saying like if I suffer enough, quick enough, fast enough, hard enough, then I'll be healed, like
Yeah.
that we can still say like I know I got to process this stuff. I hear you, Dr. Stecker. But I cannot right now. Like
Yep.
everything in me is saying like I cannot right now.
Yep.
So I'm gonna start in therapy or et cetera, like figuring out how I can be kinder to myself when I get upset. And like that's where I'm at right now. And then we're gonna work towards being able to do a deeper dive into trauma if that's where I want to go and where I can go.
I would say to anybody listening, if you're in that space that you're dealing with something traumatic and horrific, and you're not ready to talk about it, and you just don't see a point in time where you will be able to talk about it, I understand that. Take time to find safe spaces then. I don't care if it's once a week or once a day or multiple times a day. Acknowledge when you do feel safe. That is starting the healing process, even that small little step within yourself.
Yes.
When are you safe? When do you feel safe? When are you safe with yourself? When are you safe with others? Who are the safe people?
Mhm.
Just kind of notice where are you safe? That starts the healing process just right there. So I know you're saying I'm not ready to talk about it, but you are. You're by noticing and having that gratitude for the safe people, the safe places, the safe moments, you're starting the healing process.
Hmm. And you start to build a muscle, kind of like when you start to notice it, then you
Hmm.
start to be able to find the safe corners more often throughout your
Hmm.
week, more often throughout your month, more often throughout your day, when you
Hmm.
start to like exercise the muscle of identifying those places when
Yeah.
they come up.
Yeah. Really important. We should be teaching our children that.
Yeah.
Was a tangent.
Yeah. I liked it.
All right, so you've been so wonderful. Uh, I just want to end. It was a really heavy, critically important topic today. Thank you so much for being our guest. And I want to end on as positive a note as we can. For anybody who has experienced betrayal, trauma on any level, but particularly on the level that we've talked about today, um, the process towards healing is, and I'm gonna let you
Oh.
let you, I know that was a big one, but big line.
So if you let me get grounded and think. So for folks who are listening who've experienced the kind of stuff that we've been talking about,
Mhm.
traumas of any kind, you're included here. And then specifically for folks who experience this cultural betrayal trauma and these really traumatic events, like it's like the road to healing. What did you say?
I did. I said the road to healing starts, and then I
Oh,
just threw it at you.
okay. The 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 road to healing, I believe, starts with the nugget of a belief that healing is possible and like possible for you. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times we can think like, of course, healing for you is possible. I don't think this was your fault. I think that you can, be okay. But we don't feel it for ourselves. And so I think you don't need like your whole self to feel like it's possible, right? That can be too impossible as a starting place. But if you can just have like a nugget or a little piece of you that at least some of the time, thinks like, oh, like this, I could be in a better place than I am right now. And life could look different even for me, and like maybe, like I can't remember the last time that I like laughed or felt love or whatever, but I think that maybe I will again. I think that maybe I can try and 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 start to try to have the belief that you're also worth that and deserve that. So I think the road to healing starts with kind of listening to those tiny little voices
Mhm.
inside of our psyche that says like it could be different or this could be better or what if I didn't deserve this? Oh goodness. What if I didn't believe I deserved it? Maybe my life could be different. What if I were around different people? Um,
Mhm.
what if the world is crap a good portion of the time in all these ways? What if I engage in some activism and I can't change the whole system, but I could change this corner and maybe like that could
Mhm.
help heal other people as well as myself. And like the little whispers become louder and louder and louder and louder. So I think the road to healing starts with kind of listening for those little whispers.
So, starts with hope, is what you said. I mean, it really starts with hope, and it's a tiny little thing, but it's enormous to say healing is possible.
Hmm.
Healing is even possible for me.
Hmm.
Love is possible. Love is possible for me.
Hmm.
I didn't deserve it, and I deserve healing, and I deserve love. That I
Yeah.
knew you'd answer perfectly. Of course you'd.
And also perfection's not required, people. Because that was stressful, Tracy. Um, but I no, I really do believe that. And I think I've been doing this work for I don't even know, since 2007. How many years is that? Um, almost 20 years. And it's very depressing, right? And the piece that I hold on to is all the healing that I see and that I get to be around, that I get to experience myself, like it
Mhm.
really is possible. And again, it's that muscle building of like
Yeah.
the muscle to lean into the possibility of healing.
Dr. Jennifer Gómez, she's amazing. She's doing amazing work. Everybody should know about her book on betrayal trauma theory. If you haven't read the book, please do. Thank you for being here. You're an amazing light worker, and I really am grateful for your time.
Oh, I'm so grateful to have been here or to be here now, but also to have been here. Thank you, Tracy.